So there's been a lot of criticism, actually, about Monster Hunter. Now, you guys know that this is probably the game that I am the most excited for. That being said, a lot of people are criticizing the way that it runs. Many people are.
I think a lot of people are frustrated with games running slowly and looking bad, especially when they look like a blurry, smeared mess of pixels. And that's exactly what we're getting here with Monster Hunter Wilds. This video isn't just about that, but it's kind of what sparked me onto this topic, because this is a bigger topic in PC gaming where it doesn't feel like the visuals you're getting are matching the performance that you're getting. Because it's one thing if a game looks unbelievably stunning and is difficult to run, but it's another thing if the game looks kind of mid and still is incredibly difficult to run. Let's freeze this here for a second.
This is very accurate and very true. A 3060, yeah. I think you should be able to run a game like this on a 3060. And I do think that game optimization is a lost art. And I think that Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is an example of a company that still captures that. Because one of the things that really makes Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 a good game is the fact that it actually does have very good optimization.
Look at what the footage is behind me. This is running the PC benchmark for Monster Hunter Wilds at its default settings for the, and by the way, the recommended settings for the game on hardware that's a bit above the recommended hardware requirements for the game. And this is running internally at 540p. This is DLSS performance mode on a 1080p display. And it's still only running in the mid 40 FPS range in this scene, and it's looking super blurry to get there. If you're on a tiny phone screen, you might not notice that so much. If you're on a PC-sized monitor, you will. By the way, on phones, you can kind of pinch and zoom. And the PC system requirements for this game are really highlighting exactly the issues that so many people are frustrated with right now in a lot of games that have been coming out. And these system requirements not only acknowledge these problems, but they're running head first into it, just like bam. They are saying that in order...
I think that they optimize for console, and then they never think about PC afterwards. That's what it seems like with a lot of games, is that they're focused primarily on making it work for console, and then if you have a really good PC, you can run the game just fine. But like if you're just like an average, like, you know, middle of the road PC gamer, you're gonna have problems.
To hit 1080p 60 FPS, you're going to have to upscale. By the way, they don't specify here, but what they mean at the medium settings is performance mode upscaling. So 540p internal resolution, that's 50% per axis, which means 1/4 of the pixels of 1080p, and then trying to upscale that into something that doesn't look like a blurry mess, and of course it fails. But also they're saying that still won't actually get you 60 FPS, despite only being at medium settings and running at 1/4 of the pixels of 1080p. They're saying you'll still need frame generation in order to hit that 60 FPS. And this is what people are frustrated with.
Yeah, I didn't realize, like, because I was fighting that Arkfeld monster, and I think that I probably did miss a few parries and get hit by things that I wasn't in because of some degree of frame generation. Because I went back and I looked at, like, each individual frame, and I was like, yeah, probably not.
Games that feel like instead of optimizing,
increased latency,
they are just turning on upscaling and frame generation and calling it a day. Now, I wasn't in the room when this game was developed, so I don't know exactly what happened, and honestly, I think that part of the issue is that the RE engine doesn't seem to scale well to open worlds. This is the game, by the way, trying to run at native 1080p at the lowest possible settings, and in the same scene, we're only getting about 37 FPS. Jesus. And I would argue it looks even worse than the 540p upscaled to 1080p medium settings that we're getting here. This looks more smeary.
That's the lowest?
But at least is a little more cohesive.
That's the lowest,
and has a little more draw distance. This is the lowest settings, which just look extremely pixelated.
Not good.
Even at native 1080p. And like, does anything in the distance even have a shadow? I mean, it's pretty rough. And again, running at 37 FPS. So this is where people are frustrated. We're feeling like what I'm seeing on the screen doesn't look that great, and yet it's running terribly on the same
Did you have the same issue with Dragon's Dogma? No, I don't have these problems because I have a really, really good PC. So that's the thing, is like, these problems are not manifest to me, but the issue is that most people don't have a 4090. And like the PC optimization being bad is a huge issue.
That has been playing other games super, super well. For example, what if we look at Horizon Forbidden West? This is also running on an RTX 3060, and this is also an open world game.
This looks way better. Like, I mean, I don't see how you can't come to the conclusion that this looks infinitely better than Monster Hunter.
It's running at its maximum settings here.
Like fidelity-wise, I like the design of Monster Hunter, but like fidelity-wise, this looks way better.
50 FPS in a big populated town, and as you get out of town, it'll run it kind of in the mid-50s, and that's at its absolute maximum settings.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody would argue that this doesn't look great. And then also, you can go ahead and turn down to medium graphics settings, and now look, I'm running in the mid 70 FPS range here, and things scale down gracefully. This still looks good. Yeah, there's a difference between the very high settings and the medium settings in terms of like the draw distance at which things pop in.
Sure.
But still looks quite nice. And this is native 1080p, no upscaling. And then we get to this, where at native 1080p, things look awful and are still only running at 37 FPS. And if we go with the default recommended medium settings, we're upscaling from 540p, so things look extremely blurry. You can see it kind of smearing details together. And then also, I would still argue...
It just looks like soup, kind of. Like, and if you compare this, like, with how precise graphics are in, like, older games that are very well optimized, it's not even a comparison. It's like we've actually kind of gone backwards in some ways.
That things don't look all that impressive. Although generally art design is a bit subjective, but that's really where I wish a lot more games would focus, is can you design an art design that looks incredible without necessarily being super technically demanding. Check this out. This is Ghost of Tsushima running at its maximum settings. By the way, also an open world game. I'm trying to be fair and compare open world games to open world games, although I know Monster Hunter Wilds is doing different things with its open world, so it's never a direct comparison. But look at this. This looks gorgeous. But none of these tree leaves and the rocks and things like that actually have a massive amount of geometric detail or even really texture detail. But when you look at the image on the whole,
it visually looks good. I think that the comparison he's making is pretty similar to Elden Ring, where like Elden Ring, the fidelity of the game is actually relatively bad, but the lighting and color theme and art direction of it is so good that nobody cares, and it doesn't matter the fidelity of the individual models.
It just looks gorgeous. This is amazing art design. Not only that, it can scale down appropriately. If I go down to medium settings, this still looks gorgeous.
Yeah, it does look
good. And now
good.
It's running at 85 FPS on the RTX 3060. And again, if we go back and switch to this, 1080p native resolution, lowest possible settings, we're getting 37 FPS. Now, what if we turn Monster Hunter Wilds up to ultra settings? And this is native 1080p. The Ultra would default to using DLSS.
There we go.
Again, kind of looking smeary at 1080p if you do
Not
that.
so
but
good.
Native Ultra settings, 1080p, we're getting 28 FPS. And again, I'd still argue that, well, this doesn't look that stunning or anything like that.
No.
And I think part of that is the art design. Well, maybe that's subjective. And maybe some of you guys are watching this and you're like, I prefer this. I think this looks better.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly fair. But I do think it is important to think about the overall art design, and that it doesn't necessarily need to be technically demanding or technically impressive to deliver something that is still visually impressive, but a lot more performant. And that's where I think Ghost of Tsushima is an amazing masterclass in, wow, this looks beautiful. Even if I go down to medium settings, it still looks beautiful because it's the overall design. It's not that if you zoom in on one of the buckets on the side of the road that you can count the grains of lines in the wood and everything like that. It just looks awesome when you're playing the game.
I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't really care about a whole lot. And I think that a lot of games try to over-design little assets like that. And then that over-design isn't really appreciated by the average player. And I think that that's a big mistake that a lot of new big studios make, is that they try to like hyper fixate on making everything look super realistic and super like having like, grooves in it and have wear and tear on like a bucket or something like that. Like that just simply is not something that will make a person play a game or buy a game. It's nice to have, and of course it's better to have that than not have it. but the amount of like wear and tear and like demand that puts on the game, I don't think is worth the trade-off.
And it runs well. Now, so when I'm talking about is a game optimized or unoptimized, I would say that there's a few things that go into that. Because optimized doesn't mean it runs well.
Yeah.
I think it means it delivers an optimal balance between it's trying to achieve something visually and it's doing it in an optimal way, right? So if you have a game that is chasing the just most incredibly impressive visuals you've ever seen, it might be justified to run slowly. And that's okay. Like, for example, if we look at something like Senua's Saga Hellblade 2, which, by the way, is not an open world game, so I don't think comparing this directly to Monster Hunter performance-wise
really
is fair,
fair.
and that's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to show you that this game is trying to achieve basically what you would see in like a CG movie, but running in real time on gaming hardware. And I'd say it largely accomplishes that. Now, it's only running at about 37 FPS at 1080p on a 3060, but it's accomplishing something very visually impressive. And also not only that, but it actually does scale down to medium settings and still look pretty impressive, and now it's running in the mid 50 FPS range. But again, I don't think we can directly compare, the 37 FPS in this scene to the 37 FPS in this scene, because again, Monster Hunter Wilds is trying to be a big open world, and Hellblade 2 is not. So that is different. But
look at Red Dead Redemption 2. I mean, I think that basically destroys any argument that any open world game has to have bad resolution or bad optimization. It's just not true. I think it's just one of these things that a lot of developers just haven't put a lot of emphasis on, and they haven't put a lot of focus on. And I think that it's really problematic for kind of like the bottom, I would say 60% of PC users. And the people that are trying to play a game on PC, they have to use different types of technology like frame gen that indirectly creates, actually that's not true, it directly creates a worse game experience with input lag and things like that. Now, I do think that frame generation ultimately is better than it is worse, but the problem is that the over-reliance on it, and that over-reliance, it's seemingly growing larger over time, and this problem never really being addressed at a core level. Ultramad, fake frames. Well, the thing is that, here's the thing, is that for an average player, fake frames are not really going to be that important. And it's like the difference between like you're upscaling from like 40 FPS to like 60. That's totally different from upscaling from 20 to 60, right? And so it matters like the degree of how much it's happening. I think that's a big difference.
What I'm saying is a game running at 37 FPS doesn't necessarily tell me
from 20
it's
to
unoptimized.
240.
It might be trying to achieve something incredibly visually impressive.
Fake frames are just bad. I would argue that I think that 90% of gamers do not mind fake frames, but I think that the problem with fake frames will get worse enough to where it will be a problem for average players. So it's not a big deal right now. But if things keep going the way that I think that they're going, where they just keep getting worse, then it will be problematic.
But I do think if something is optimized, it should the visuals should match what the performance is. And open world or not, 37 FPS on something that looks like this seems unreasonable to me. There should have been a better way to scale down the visuals and increase performance while still looking good. But maybe that would have had to have happened way back in the original design planning stage of the game.
Someone brought up a really good point. I bet most people would not even know in a blind test whether the newer gen frame gen is on. Yeah, exactly. And like that's what I was saying is that I do actually think that this is a minority problem, but I think it's also a mining canary minority problem, where like the more serious and like experienced players that are like more focused on performance and like, like really snappy responsiveness, they're the ones that are going to be affected by it first, but then you're going to have it get worse and worse over time.
Even as far back as choosing the engine. Because again, looking at Dragon's Dogma 2, for example, which is also trying to use the RE engine in a big open world environment.
And that had problems as well.
That one kind of struggles too, especially when you get a lot of NPCs on the screen. So this issue of being unoptimized could actually just be an issue of by the time they chose this engine, it might have already been too late for the game design that they were targeting.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think when we get to unoptimized games, I think that's another thing. Is sometimes it is the engine choice. Like Unreal Engine, which this isn't, by the way. Actually, Hellblade is, is Unreal Engine 5. You know, it can be difficult to get this super performance. So part of your game design choice is what engine you use. And for example, some of the games I was highlighting as seeming to be a lot more optimal, I think are using their own custom engines, like with Ghost of Tsushima.
I would say also with Cyberpunk. Like I like the Cyberpunk engine a lot and the way that it played.
The Decima engine I know is being used in Horizon Forbidden West.
Yeah, but they're getting rid of it.
Part of it is the engine choice. That is part of the game development
Red
process.
engine? Yeah.
Is choosing what engine you're going to use.
I think that's what it's called.
But I think another one is, you know, I think consoles are the lead game development target generally.
Yeah, it's exactly
and
what I was
what
saying.
frame rate are they targeting, and what resolution are they targeting?
I don't know why console players accept such low quality frame rates for games. It's really surprising to me because, like, back in the day, like, I mean, Super Mario Brothers 3 ran at a really good frame rate because you're playing on a CRT monitor. Like, when did we decide that having like 30 FPS was good enough?
Design the original game and its art, right?
It's crazy.
Because I think that a lot of game developers, when they started working on PS5 generation games several years ago, were used to the console paradigm where 30 FPS gaming was the norm. And if that's the case, and they're targeting 30 FPS for their original design choices, that gives you a certain frame time budget, a certain number of milliseconds in which each frame is going to be computed. And if you instead target 60 FPS, you're losing a ton of those milliseconds of time to compute the frame. So I think that if a game is originally designed around a 30 FPS target on consoles, that's where we're seeing the ones where if you want to run it at 60 FPS, you end up like this is, which is butchering everything with crazy levels of upscaling because the original art was not designed around running super well. So you just have to...
Yeah, it doesn't look good. I mean, at the end of the day, like, I mean, he's using big words and, like, long explanations, but it doesn't look good. And at the end of the day, like, if I look at this game and I compare it to, like, Monster Hunter World, it doesn't look like this game came out 8 years later.
Reduce the burden on the GPU to decrease the frame time cost by just cutting the resolution.
Just the way it is.
Or just really, one thing I'm saying here when we go down to the lowest settings, or just really ungracefully butchering the overall art. Like they have the certain target.
That is a good idea. Somebody has in chat that they could have Trump sign an executive order that bans video games that can't run at 60 FPS. Yeah, I think that would be smart. Because it's ridiculous. Like, I mean, we got rid of paper straws. I mean, paper straws are stupid too. So why can't we do this?
Or just really ungracefully butchering the overall art. Like, they have the certain target they were looking for, and if you want to go below that, it just kind of looks awful. You're just turning off certain settings. It just looks bad, right? This does not scale down gracefully. So, but again, I think part of it is also just the engine choice from the original place. But in general, this is what a lot of people are frustrated with. Games that are designed to run on, you know, reasonable hardware. Like, but on that reasonable hardware, they're relying on massive levels of upscaling and even frame generation just to hit 60 FPS. So I think game designers need to realize that what a lot of people want is a game that plays well. And part of playing well...
Exactly. Fucking exactly. Playing well is more important than looking good. Now, in a perfect world, a game looks good and it plays well. But if you're going to have one, playing well matters a whole lot more than looking good.
Is playing at a good frame rate. And honestly, 60 FPS on reasonable, you know, console-ish level hardware, I think should be the default game design choice. And you need to start the game from the ground up with that target. Because if you don't, I think you end up in this kind of a situation. And so, again, I'm not a game developer, and I think all the different issues come in with different engine choices and everything like that. But I think a big part of it really should be designing art that looks beautiful without necessarily needing to be extremely demanding to
Elden Ring is the master class for this.
run. And certain games, I think, do that super well. And I think everybody's happy with that. When people get a game that looks nice, it doesn't need to push all the boundaries, but performs well, I think they're happy with that. So people are looking for games that are fun to play.
I think this take is kind of dumb, but it's all right. So this is what I think is going to happen. I think what's going to happen over the years is that frame generation and upscaling is going to be used more and more. And unless they can find a way to remove the input lag inside of the frame generation and upscaling, I think what that's going to create is it's going to create a worse base experience for an average user, and it's going to make people enjoy the games less because they're going to feel less responsive, more blurry, and less visually appealing. So right now, this problem is definitely a nerd problem. This is 100% a nerd problem, but I think in this case, the nerds are the mining canary. And this problem will become an issue that average players will face in probably 5 years.
Good enough.
That's what I think.
And run well, right? That's what they want. Now, I think it's totally okay to just have your own thing you're going for, to try to push the absolute boundaries of what a rendering live can do. That's okay if that's your game design target, and that's really a whole different thing. But at the same time, you know, the actual gameplay of a game like this is also targeting something different, right? This is mostly slowly walking, right?
Yeah.
Whereas a game like Monster Hunter, you're in big battles. This is about the gameplay.
Yeah, you got to react really fast.
Showcase, and yet
that's a huge difference.
It manages
Massive
to be
difference.
Incredibly demanding on the GPU. It's a bit rough. Anyway, I'm not quite sure exactly how to end this video, other than you guys could tell me about how you feel about the current state of game optimization in the comment section.
Yeah.
Because again, I think it's about, does it match, like, is what you're seeing matching the performance level that you're getting? Because a lot of times nowadays, I don't think it is. And there's something going wrong in the initial, I think, design phase of the game, or the optimization phase of the game, or both, where something needs to be different, because this isn't looking good. And if we look at the performance advantages we're getting,
I think if you just visually look at this, it looks very, very bad. It looks super pixely. It looks just like, this looks like a game that you like downloaded a cracked version of it in like 2013 on your PC that you bought from like Costco. It does not look good. For me, it does, but that's because I have a really good card.
Less jumps in the future. So it used to be the case that, oh, this game came out, it performs badly, just wait a year, and graphics cards are going to be like twice as powerful. We're not getting those huge jumps anymore either. So it's at the same time as all of this is happening, it's getting harder to just brute force through it. Not that it's really great to have to do that anyway. But anyway, that's where we're at. Let me know how you feel about all of this in the comment section, and I still hope all of you have an excellent day.
Yeah, so just a second. I think this is a big issue, and I think it will become bigger overall, but I hope that, like, because obviously I really like games like Monster Hunter, and I like the way that they look, but like my experience playing these games is like so unique to what I'm doing that the average person is not going to see this. Cost benefit is why low frame rate is being accepted. Console players can't afford to buy a 5K gaming PC and repair them when it breaks down unless Starforge offers gaming PCs for cheap. This is what they settle for. My dream is to be able to make a $1,000 gaming PC, but the problem is that they just keep trying to, like, I want NVIDIA to come out with a card generation that is basically the same, but the cost is way less. Because I do think that we're beginning to hit kind of a massive diminishing return on graphics. Like, just stop trying to go 5% better, make it 3% better, and just make it 20% cheaper. Because that's what I think a lot of people are waiting for right now. Is that's what's really holding a lot of people back from becoming PC gamers and getting involved in gaming, is because it's too expensive. It's way too expensive to do. And that's AMD's job. Well, whoever the fuck does it needs to do it, right? I mean, I don't know how much AMD's cards are or anything. Performance is everything. Well, its performance and quality exist in the same ecosystem, which is the value that the person is getting. So performance does matter and quality matters. So at the point where I think a lot of these cards are focusing primarily on quality, I think that a lot of people need a better baseline of performance. And that's the big issue. And also cost. Like, that's the main thing, too. It's a privilege to, yeah, I mean, nowadays it is with the amount of, with the expense it has, absolutely. Power efficiency is really important, too. Yeah. The issue is NVIDIA would rather build data center chips than the chips for consumer GPUs. Well, I think that it will happen overall, but like, I really like this video because, as I said, I think this guy's bringing up a problem that a lot of casual like gamers are going to start realizing more and more over time. There's the video right there. Give it a like. Cloud gaming is the future. I think that you're right with cloud gaming being the future. I definitely do. NVIDIA 5000 series is terrible value. It's never going back. I actually think that NVIDIA, I kind of agree. I feel like when the 4090s came out, like it was a big jump, right? At least it felt to me like a big jump. And I remember whenever the 1080 Ti came out, it was like, oh shit, right? Like that was the last graphics card I remember that like maybe the 2080 or 2090 was also really good. Like that was huge. And I don't know if we're going to have another big jump like that. But yeah, I remember the 1080 Ti. Like I still have that. My streaming PC right now at this very moment is running a Ti 1080. Yeah, I still am using it. That's how good it is. And this is from like, what, fucking 8 years ago? Something like that? Yeah, what is this? And yeah, what's the rest of it here? And I love making fun of the markets because a few of the market too. I think a lot of people just don't understand what this problem is. And I don't think that they will, hopefully, unfortunately, probably for a while until it gets a bit worse. But like, I think also there's like this idea that in PC gaming, the solution is to always just buy a better PC. Oh, we'll just buy the $2,700 graphics card. Oh, duh, of course, just go spend $5,000. It's easy. You know, people are fucking broke. Yeah, these are people who can't even afford a fucking $70 game. Like, you're trying to ask them to do that. It's insane. And they're fucking sold out, so you got to buy it for $6,000. It's crazy how expensive this shit is. So yeah, hopefully PC gaming improves.